I went to see the movie with the boys at 7 p.m. yesterday, and I gotta say, I was not expecting a lot. I actually think that the trailers were really bad and that they practically killed all my hype for the movie, but then I learned that MatPat was voicing Toy Bonnie, and all my hype skyrocketed again.
Don't you tell me how many calories I need, bitch!
When I was in the theater, I was excited to see how they were gonna do everything and improve upon the missteps from the first movie. And after the opening, which was genuinely fantastic, I was really ready to be blown away by what the FNAF movie team had accomplished. Then I wasn't. I'm just going to say, this movie gets a 5 out of 10 from me. Now what does that mean? It means that I don't think the movie was bad. I don't. It means that it had certain ideas that were great but really suffered in the execution department, character actions or decisions that were simply baffling, had weird or inconsistent presentation, and was chock full of wasted potential. I'll try not to get too deep into spoilers here, but I will talk about some things that happen in the movie. I'll put a warning before any real big spoilers are talked about, so you don't have to be worried about that. Alright, first thing I want to talk about is how they used So, in terms of character, I actually think that the puppet, or Charlotte as I'll call her from here on, was done pretty well. The movie takes the story of how she was ignored and abandoned, as well as the story of how she was a savior in the games, and twists it in a way so that it makes sense for her and all the other animatronics to act the way they do. But the way that her physical presence was represented was just weird. Alright, very minor spoilers for what the puppet actually does from here on. Look, FNAF has always been supernatural in nature, but I think that this movie takes that aspect a bit too far, because in this movie, Charlotte just straight up possesses people. And what's worse is that a majority of the time, it just looks freaking goofy. Almost like Harley Quinn just appears in the movie out of nowhere. I do get what they were going for with the look of the people she possesses, and in some shots where the person who's possessed is just out of frame and is floating like a freaky squid, it actually works. But not so much when the person is fully shown. The person in question is basically wearing makeup that looks like the puppet's mask and gains similar proportions to how the puppet looks. And the puppet parts of said person do really look phenomenal. But then you see the actual person and it just all comes apart. And again, I see what they were going with here, and there is precedent in the games for the animatronics to take control of people. But in the games, I think the way it's done there is much scarier and obviously more horrific. If they went more with the game route, I think it would have been really cool, even though a couple tweaks to the story may have been needed for the ending. I like the way they framed the music box, and I like the way they used the crying child imagery on Charlotte herself, and overall I think they did the puppet well. They just could have done better with her visually. And to be honest, the jump scares with the actual puppet animatronic were just not good. In fact, the vast majority of the jump scares in this movie kinda sucked. And the main reason why is because of
she is such a bad bitch though!
The biggest problem with the animatronics both in this movie and in the previous one is their maneuverability. The Yellow Rabbit, aka Spring Bonnie, aka Springtrap, is far and away the best suit in the entire series, simply because it has the capacity to be scary, it can actually move around in all the joints, and Matthew Lillard is a national treasure. Something I also really like about the sound design of this movie is the footsteps of the animatronics. They're loud, imposing, booming even, and you can very easily tell if they are getting closer or further away from you. And in the opening, this fact is used to great effect to build terror and suspense. Then, it's never done like that again. Now, for the most part, I like the toy animatronics. The performances from all the actors, especially Toy Freddy's because Kellen Goff just is Freddy, were great. However, I was disappointed by Toy Bonnie a bit. Not because MatPat did a bad job, no, not at all, but because it wasn't memeable. If you told me the voice of Toy Bonnie in this movie was MatPat, I'd be thoroughly surprised. The suits do look fantastic, of course, and they make good threats throughout a majority of the movie, especially Mangle. I feel they did her really well in the movie, and he has the best kill both in a thematic sense and just overall. But most of all, they didn't suffer from the footstep problem, and by that, I mean whenever any of the toys are on screen, they are very slow and very loud. But when they're off screen, all of a sudden, they are silent ninjas that have the capability to move at light speed. The people who are put in peril in this movie would be completely fine if they just ran away, because these things are not catching up to them. It makes the perilous situation some of the people in the film get into seem a bit contrived and frankly stupid. Most importantly, it makes the jump scares they're involved in not hit at all. They hit about as hard as a Jason in Manhattan jump scare. Also, near the end, the threat is just completely nullified, and again, I don't want to spoil the actual ending, so I'll just do that after I talk about So as you can probably tell from the trailers, there is a segment in this movie that loosely recreates the gameplay from the second game, which is something I really acknowledge and appreciate. There's also a literal blink and you'll miss it cameo in this segment that got a Leonardo DiCaprio pog and point at the screen moment from me. But other than that, this scene also showcases the withered animatronics, all of whom look and sound fantastic by the way. But the main problem I have with them here is that they're just far too slow and ultimately unthreatening. Mike uses the mask to fend them off, of course, that makes sense, but he also has so much freaking time to do so, it honestly makes me a bit jealous. Minor spoiler here as well. For instance, Withered Freddy pulls his iconic reaching pose at Mike, and the man takes a solid 3 seconds to get the thing on his face. And while he's doing so, Freddy's just staying in that position. Once that happened, I instantly felt no threat from all of these guys, except for Foxy. Obviously, the mask doesn't work on him, but once that's established, Mike still has more than enough time to do what he needs to in order to get out of that situation, because for some reason, Foxy felt it fit to take almost 10 seconds to actually start attacking him. He was genuinely more of a threat in 5 AM at Freddy's 2. And after that, that's all you get of the withered animatronics. They're done. Overall, the main problem with the way they're used is the fact that their threat specifically doesn't hold much urgency. It felt like Mike was able to take his sweet time in fending them off as he was doing what he needed to, and that's really a shame, because with characters as cool as the withered animatronics, I feel they could have come out much better than they did. When the movie is fully out and I actually have footage to talk alongside and review further, since these are my immediate thoughts after just seeing the movie, I'd love to talk about how this scene could be reworked slightly to be much more effective. Because what good is there in pointing out flaws if you can't provide remedies as well? Alright, now I've got to get big into spoilers, so if you've watched up to this point and don't want to be spoiled but want my closing thoughts, if you're a FNAF fan, I recommend you watch this movie. It's overall a fun time, especially with friends. There's a lot here to love, as well as a lot of love pointed towards you. There's a lot of fan service here, and I'm sure you'll be pointing and gawking at the screen multiple times. If you're not a FNAF fan though, you're probably fine skipping me out on this one. Alright, spoiler time in 3, 2, 1.
What the hell is that?
This is, hands down, the worst part of the movie. So much so that it single-handedly brought the movie down a point or two for me. Because it's so stupid, so contrived, and so horrifically rushed that I was genuinely thinking, don't tell me that's how it ends, right before the credits started rolling. Now that we're in spoiler talk, I have to talk about Michael Afton's character. I think they went in an interesting direction with him wanting to carry on the legacy of his father and wanting Vanessa to join him in that crusade. Too bad it all immediately goes down the drain along with the toy animatronics as the OGs show up to do Mortal Kombat style fatalities on each of the toys, which was supposed to be a joke. The animatronic battle royale was never supposed to be an actual thing, but I guess we have it now, so do with that what you will. And my biggest problem with this wasn't the fact that it happens at all, it's the fact that the toys put up absolutely zero fight. They're all taken down so easily, it's just such a whimper to end the overarching threats of the movie on. Michael adds nothing but exposition to this movie, and he's taken out immediately after he's done fulfilling that purpose. You know who else is immediately taken out after fulfilling their purpose? The OG animatronics. They just show up, kill the toys, and then die because they aren't able to be out of the restaurant for prolonged periods of time. The Golden Freddy kid says we gotta move on now, which is sweet, but the way they did this was still done stupidly. Then he goes, oh yeah, and when we're gone, Afton's gonna do his catchphrase, so good luck with that. And then they dip. Mike tells Vanessa to stay away from them because all of a sudden he can no longer trust her because of Michael's existence. Then Vanessa gets possessed by Charlie and the movie ends. So, that isn't great. However, funnily enough, I can say that I think FNAF 3 is in a much better position to be a great movie because of this one's existence. Everything is already set up due to the movie ending on a cliffhanger. The post-credit scene that plays showing Springtrap looks genuinely incredible and pays homage to the teaser with the actual eyes from the game, and I know a lot of people will be pleased to hear that. And most of all, the suit itself. I'm not too sure how they're going to do the desecrated innards within Springtrap's body, but if he moves anything like he does in this movie and in FNAF 1, we are going to be in for a treat. He was definitely the scariest thing about this movie, and he didn't even have all his Springtrappiness about him. So when he's moving around and doing his thing and actually looking the part for it, with the atmosphere and overall tone that the name FNAF 3 brings, I'm honestly really excited to see how that's going to turn out. Overall, as stated before, I do think that this movie is worth watching if you're a fan of FNAF and enjoyed the first one. I don't at all want to discount the work and effort that went into this movie and the genuine attempts at improvement that were made for it. There is a ton of fan service and love that's obvious if you got the eye for it, but you really aren't going to get much from this movie if you aren't very familiar with the franchise. I think there is much about this movie that could have been done better, and if you're interested in hearing that, I'd love to do a deep dive on what I'd change and attempt to improve upon when the movie releases digitally so that I can actually use relevant footage. And that's all my thoughts. Now, I want to know yours. Did you like the movie? Did you hate it? Do you still think nuance exists and have conflicting opinions on it? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments, and for the love of Toy Freddy's Five Nights at Mr. Hug's playthrough, keep it civil and constructive down there. Disagreements are a common and expected part of life, and they keep things interesting. Just don't be an asshole. I don't normally do movie reviews on this channel yet, but if you like the way I talk about them, feel free to stick around as I like engaging with all forms of media, not just video games, and I definitely plan to do more in the future. I've been a guy with too long of a name, thank you for watching, and if you'll excuse me, I must partake in the peak male fantasy that is Tales of Glory. Until I talk about that, be entertaining. You know who else is... Fuck. Gee, that's not funny. Why am I laughing at that? You know who else is...